If you're trying to find the best ED medication, it would be helpful to know what most men choose, but it would be way more helpful to know what men chose after they had chosen. Meaning they took one ED medication, decided that wasn't as good as they had hoped, so they switched to another. What is that second thing that fixed their problem? That's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to show you 1,000 real patients and what they switched to after they had chosen. So we're going to be talking about sildenafil, tadalafil, and compounded medications. The compounded medication information is probably the most profound, but we're going to say that a little bit later. Most of you take sildenafil or tadalafil, so we're going to talk about that. Sildenafil is the active ingredient in Viagra. Tadalafil is the active ingredient in Cialis. You do not need to remember that to understand this video. 1,000 men, most, stuck with their initial medication. And that's important to realize, guys. It means that both of these medications, sildenafil and tadalafil, are fantastic. And if you choose either one of them, odds are, based upon this data, it's probably going to work for you. But 80 men out of 1,000 did switch medications. Now, of those 80 men, 52% switched from sildenafil to tadalafil, and only 11% switched from tadalafil to sildenafil. Now, 16% switched from sildenafil to tadalafil and then back to sildenafil, and 8% switched from tadalafil to sildenafil and then back to tadalafil. I'm going to summarize all of this for you in just a second. You do not need to remember those percentages. So what does all of this mean? At the end of all of this switching, 67% of the men who had switched were taking tadalafil. So I can safely say that of these 1,000 men, when men had experienced both types of medication, they preferred tadalafil overall. Now, before I tell you why that's the case, I am going to tell you why I think we have this data and why I wanted to share it with you, and I'm not sure any other telehealth company would. So far as I know, we're the only telehealth company that doesn't have subscriptions because I just personally hate subscriptions and think they're utterly ridiculous. There are subscriptions for everything nowadays, and I think having subscriptions for ED medication is silly. It's not something I would want to do as a consumer, and it's not something that I think that I wanted to sell to you guys. Point is, when it comes to this data, because men go to the website every single time and choose or re-choose medication, this is real data. They're not getting sent refills automatically. So if someone takes sildenafil and then thinks to themselves, I wonder what tadalafil is like, they can do that at shamelesscare.com because they haven't already been sent a lifetime supply of the first medication that they chose. Now, if you're interested in real ED solutions without subscriptions, click the link below. Now, why do I think that men would choose tadalafil over sildenafil overall when they had experienced both? Well, it comes down to side effects and timing. The side effect profile of sildenafil and tadalafil are somewhat the same, but also different. And sildenafil can cause some more profound side effects in different ways, potentially around vision. Whereas tadalafil's side effects are a little bit different in terms of joint pain or muscle pain. I did a whole video on this, which I'll link in the description below, but timing is what men talk about a lot. So sildenafil peaks very quickly and very sharply. And so if you know when you're going to have sex, sildenafil might be your best bet. But if you're a little bit more spontaneous, then tadalafil, which is a little bit more blunted, but longer, up to 36 hours, might be the perfect solution for you. But now let's talk about compounded medications because that's the part that surprised me the most. A compounded medication is made by a compounding pharmacy, and there's lots of different varieties of medications made in that way. But most commonly in the ED world, things are compounded so that you can add different active ingredients together, like sildenafil and tadalafil, which is in our Shameless Duo, or sildenafil, tadalafil, and apomorphine, which is in our Shameless Trio. Now, interestingly enough, is that 9% of men who switched from either sildenafil or tadalafil switched to a compounded medication. But what's really surprising to me is that 93% of the men who switched to a compounded medication stayed with compounded medications, even though, and this is really important, compounded medications are really bad in certain ways. They're much more expensive. They don't last as long. Instead of swallowing it, you have to put it under your tongue and let it dissolve, which takes a few minutes and honestly can be a little bit awkward. There's a much more of a taste, but I guess for most men who have tried it, the positives outweigh the negatives. Now, men who might have switched from a generic tablet to a compounded medication probably have lots of reasons for doing that, but perhaps timing is the biggest one of them because you can get the best of both worlds in terms of sildenafil and tadalafil. Now, listen to me very carefully, guys. Most of you do not need a compounded medication. Remember earlier when I said that most men stuck with the initial treatment? Let's not lose track of that. Let's not always think about what's biggest or best or most powerful. You may not need any of those things. 1,000 men started out taking sildenafil or tadalafil, and most of them stuck with sildenafil or tadalafil. As the founder of the company, one of the things that really surprises me about YouTube is how much I enjoy learning. Like in this case, it's our data, but even I was surprised at the answers, and hopefully you got something out of it as well. And speaking of YouTube, if I could hear back from you guys, like what do you want to talk about next? What do you want the next video to be? Let me know in the comments, and I promise you I will read and respond to every single one of them. So I was surprised by this data, but also not surprised because, of course, we've been around for nearly 5 years, thousands of customers. I've seen people bounce around from medication to medication and tell us why. But the important thing is that you don't stick with something that's not working well for you. And particularly if you're having a side effect, go back to your physician, go back to whoever's doing your medical care for you. Tell them about your side effects and tell them about how the medication is working or not. Because one of the things we didn't talk about today is dosing. It may be that sildenafil works great for you, but you're on 25 milligrams and you really need 50, or you're on 50 and you need 100, so on and so forth. There's so many options out there for you. Well, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it, and we'll talk again in just a few days.